What's up, y'all? Billy from Perma Pastures Farm. This is the one you've been waiting for because I'm going to show you once again how I transform this into this. And guess what? I'm going to show you all the tips and tricks and the people I got them from. I didn't keep track of how many days, but it's been under 2 weeks. And everything has been hot enough, long enough. If you don't know what I mean by that, go back and watch the first 2 videos where I kind of go into that in detail. Now, let me get this off of here and I'll tell you what's up. So, on that last flip, it got up to, it basically got about 138, hovered somewhere around there, and then today it's actually down to about 134. Remember, as long as it doesn't go below 131, we're cool. So on that last flip, I let it go for 3 days. Remember, between 131 and 150, it's going to go 3 days. So you can see that it cooked down quite a bit, and as you can tell, all this stuff is still pretty much identifiable on the top. But now the only thing left to do is, man, you got to love this process. All I had to do is flip this thing twice, assemble it and flipped it twice, let everything hit the hot center for long enough. That's critical. Now, the cool thing is we're going to get rid of the thermometer, clean it off, and I'm going to break this cage down. One of the reasons I love this method so much is that when I tear this cage off, the moisture and everything else is basically going to let it stay where it is. So that's really cool. And it's really cool when you're flipping because you might very well need to do some stuff. How cool is that? Everything looks as it should. I could literally take this at this point, throw it in one of my bins that I have back here, and then just let it sit and then finish out. Now I could do that, but I'm going to show you some tricks right now of what I do that I learned from some pretty awesome people in the world of permaculture and even in the world of medicine that we're going to bring to bear over here. So now it's literally just take my pitchfork, as before where I had to break it down a certain kind of way. That's really not all that necessary. What is important is that I check the moisture. And once again, I want to be able to take a squeeze of it and get 1 drop out of it. That's kind of critical. And also I want to fluff it up because once again, air is definitely our friend. Got a few scoops over here, basically from the pitchfork. Here's where we get down to brass tacks. I'm looking at some of this and I still see actinobacteria. Hopefully you can see that. Some of the white stuff on the leaves and some of it on all this other stuff that isn't broken down. And there's going to be a fair piece of it that isn't broken down in terms of carbon. Now, when your temperatures are up real high, your bacteria is having a field day. Your fungus doesn't really go to work until that temperature drops considerably. In fact, you can't even call this stuff compost until it gets to ambient temperature, legit. And at that point, I would still even wait. But as I'm doing this last flip, and there could be another subsequent flip, first thing I want to do is get a handful of it, squeeze it, check my moisture. You can see some coming through my fingers. Let me check it in multiple spots. Yep, good. And good. Okay. So here's the tricks, and this is what you tuned in for. Over here, I have compost extract that I made out of this ballin' compost I have over here. There's a couple of methods I could go through in terms of putting this together. I could literally take compost, the good compost, finished compost that I already have, and I could take those awesome microbes that I know are in that pile, put them in here to get this off and running. Or I could save what I have and make a compost extract and put that in here. Right now, bacteria is not having a problem. In fact, 9 times out of 10, when you're dealing with something, bacteria is not, you don't have a problem with too much bacteria. It's trying to get the fungal component in there. And that's where I want to give a hat tip to my man, Eric Sider. Go check out his YouTube channel. He's got the ball in this permaculture shirts on planet Earth. This is one of the tricks I got from him because it led me to one from Jeff Lawton. Right here, what you see is homemade oat flour. I use organic steel cut oats, and this is fungal food on steroids. Right over here, I got some stuff that was sitting in the fridge for a while. I got some turkey tail mushrooms, King Strophoria, a few others, things that are really going to help in terms of getting fungal components into here. All right, a lot of it's already in there because we use from the beginning a little bit of that. I didn't catch it on film, but I can always add more because I know all of the organisms that were in this pile through the extraction period are basically now in my bucket over here. Now, it's really this simple. There's a couple more components I'm going to add to this. Over here, believe it or not, y'all, it ain't molasses because I'll never put molasses in a compost pile. It's urine that I've collected. And I got this one from Dr. Ed Group. Now, this is going to be a little bit woo-woo for some people out there, but I've been really examining a lot of this stuff, and I've been using a lot of urine. Things that I really don't talk about. I've only done one video on urine and how we use it on the farm, how we use it to break down stumps without having to use chemicals. I've done that video a while back, probably have to do an updated version. But he had also recommended using it in your compost pile. Now, I already do it. Every single time I'm outside, there's probably a tree with a mulch ring around it somewhere. I'm always going to pee on it. Because despite what everybody tells you, your urine, believe it or not, to many people out there, maybe not in the Western world, but to a lot of people, is something of your own medicine. So it's the belief in certain cultures that take seeds before they plant them and stick them in their mouth for a while is to basically imprint onto that seed what you need, and the seed goes to work. That's the belief. Well, the same thing happens, depending on whom you ask, with urine. So I'll put a little bit in here. Now, this is basically high octane nitrogen, and since it came from the permaculture pimp daddy, it's especially, I'm joking, it's especially useful. Now, there's one more component that I left over here, and I'm going to grab it. And I got this one from the great Stefan Subkowiak. This is volcanic rock dust, okay? Now, why would I put that in here? Well, it's the same reason. He's been doing it up there in his permaculture orchard in Canada for a while, and he suggested that I put it in the compost, and I've been doing it for a while. In fact, it's already in this over here. Here's what happens. When your soil components are being broken down, it's basically your bacteria and your fungi that are doing 99% of that. They get a shopping list, as Dr. Lane says. They go out and get that stuff and they bring it back. Well, already in the soil you are, no matter where you are on the planet, you already have pretty much everything you need. But there are also those blue zones in the world and some of the other places in this planet where they have something very special in that soil. And that's why I'm bringing this volcanic rock dust to bear. And then you always ask yourself, if you're going to add anything to your compost, is there a likelihood that it could possibly hurt? That's a legit question. No, unless there's too much of it. And definitely yes, if I go crazy on the urine. So I want to make sure that I use this sparingly, and I could put a ton of this in there. It's going to not have any negative effect, no deleterious effects that I'm going to expect from the oat flour. So here's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to layer this stuff all the way through. Grab a handful, and the only reason I have the gloves on right now, number one, I'm still treating this stuff like there could potentially be some pathogens in there. There may be in parts that haven't been done yet. But also, when you work with things like this, it does to your hands what like working in concrete. It will absolutely dry you out, but it's also just good practice. So that's what I'm going to start with. The moisture's good, and like I said, it's just a dusting of all this fungal food. There's other fungal foods you can put out there. These other things that have been sitting in, these plugs that have been sitting in the fridge, I'm just going to take them and I'll probably sprinkle them throughout. Got these from Mushroom Mountain. Want to give them a shout out. They make some good stuff. So that's where we are right now. So it's time to go back over here, and all I'm going to do is keep layering it all the way through. Not necessarily dry. It doesn't necessarily need this moisture, but what I do need it is basically to get this stuff kind of integrated in here, and it's important for me to get the microbiology, the biology out of that pile into here. So I'm just going to use this a little bit sparingly. I'm not going to go crazy with it. And then repeat the process. Now, the urine. Here's about all I'm going to put on it for the time being. There you go. I'm not really going to do much more than that because my moisture is good. Now it's just keep layering this all the way through, and then we're going to show you some stuff at the end of it. If I leave this go, I'm not in a big rush to get this done. I don't need an 18-day pile, and I don't want to have to keep fooling with it. But you're going to find yourself in those places where, man, I'd really like to speed this thing up a little bit. What could I do? And that's what I got in this bucket. And that's more comfrey. And what I'm going to do, you can go a couple of different ways. You want to try to situate it maybe in the middle of your pile. Now, if you do this, you're doing it with the expectation that you're probably going to flip it again. So right there, I got a layer of comfrey. And why am I using comfrey? Because I could use some other high nitrogen sources. Well, number one, it's a dynamic accumulator, meaning that it takes all those awesome minerals in the earth, deposits it in the leaves for our benefit, and now I got it into my pile. Plus, it's going to heat up this time of year. This stuff is high octane. So I'm going to use that to heat this pile up even some more. Because I would like to, like I said, I'm not in a rush, but I want to show you that if at this stage you didn't quite get where you wanted to be, well, you still got options. You can still keep heating it up and turning it. So I just took about a quarter of the bucket, I put it here, and I'm going to layer it as I go through. And I'm going to continue what I've been doing. So putting in the urine, which, like I said, very sparingly, putting in the extract that I made from my really awesome pile because I want that biology in here. Just going to use a little bit of it, make sure it's not too wet. Back to my volcanic rock dust. Gotta love that. And then a handful of some of this oat flour, which I made. So it's really that simple. And there's, as far as proportions, y'all, that was basically 3 little canisters of organic oat flour. Don't need anywhere near that much because a lot of the fungal component that I'm getting in here came out of this pile. I don't even know how many different strains of fungi in there, beneficial stuff. Everybody hears fungus and you start to run off. That's not a bad thing. The problem that we have with most of that bag stuff, and remember, we did a video testing all that stuff a while back. We tested all of it, and not one single brand that we found in a bag had anything but bacteria, and some of it didn't even have that. So this is how you beat all that. So now that my comfrey's down, back to the drawing board. I'm going to layer some more comfrey in here. I'm just going to make it burn up a little bit more. Plus, I got to get rid of this stuff, and this is a good way to go about it. There's a whole lot of... Look, man, I'm just going to keep it real. There's a whole lot of frauds out there, especially on your box store shelves, saying, add this amendment, and it'll make your compost just on fire. Or do this or do that. Michelle's looked at that stuff under the microscope, too, and it's as worthless as 2 dead flies. So don't get yourself mixed up in a lot of that stuff. Just go out here, take your time, and don't be afraid to mess it up. Good night, man. We've had a lot of failures before we ever got this down to what we think is a science. And it took practice and practice and practice and practice. Finally, you find out what not to do. Then you work on the things that you think you ought to do. So it's just a combination of just absorbing those things that are helpful, but honestly, I'm not trusting anything that comes in a bag at the store, or better still, you ever go to buy that stuff at the municipality, at your wherever you may live? You ever notice that stuff is smoking hot? Well, it ain't done composting. They shouldn't even be selling that stuff. And in fact, like I said, I'm not even going to call this stuff compost until it hits ambient temperature. Now that we got some more comfort down there, I'm just going to keep on trucking. So that's nearly a wrap. Only thing left to do, take this, find halfway like we showed you before, stick it down through the middle, and we're going to leave that there. Now, I'm not going to cover this up for a couple of reasons. Number one, it got just a tad bit wet, so through here is something of a breezeway, and it'll dry that out in no time at all. So we'll definitely stay on top of it. You want to cover it up like, if you have that finished compost and you wanted to let it sit for 3 weeks or whatever, knock yourself out. So let's just kind of go through the components one last time. This is the oat flour, and when this pile gets down to a lower temperature, that's when the fungus is going to want to take over. and you got food. You got a basic lunchbox. Got the urine over here, and I told you the reasons before. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of it right now. It really should have its own video, the full extent of how we use urine and how we use it in things like our compost and stuff like that. So you could also use it to heat up a pile if you had to. This bucket inside here had the extract from that compost over here, which I know is excellent. So you got a choice. I could either take shovels and layer it through here, or I can make an extract and do the very same thing without using up a whole bunch of my finished compost. And then, of course, the volcanic rock dust. You know what? There are certain things where I think science is okay, and there are certain places where I think science hasn't caught up or is just flat out corrupt, but that's another video altogether. But when it comes to this rock dust, some of the best compost makers on the planet, people that if I were to, I didn't get permission to mention their names, but I know they use their version of rock dust in the very same process. It may not be the volcanic stuff, but it's the stuff they use. And they are some of the best on the planet by doing it. So glad to take all this stuff to bear. At this point, it's nothing more than a waiting game. I could sit here and speed up the process if I wanted, but like I said, I'm not in a rush. I got plenty of what I need over here. And this over here will just kind of sit back, let it heat up a little bit, because remember, I put all that comfrey through here, got the thermometer in here so we can monitor it. So until it gets down to ambient temperature, y'all, don't use it. It's not compost yet. So what I foresee at the next thing, so it's going to be a while before I do an update on this. The next step in this is just to sit back for a while, and then I'm probably going to give it a week, maybe a little bit more, and then I'm going to turn it from here into this bin over here, or into the one that Michelle's filming me from right now. And that's really it. So y'all, give it a shot. I mean, go out there, just give this stuff a shot. You can learn it. We're not fusing DNA here, y'all. This isn't that difficult. Just take some time and a lot of practice, and you can get it. And then it's always here for you. You never have to worry about, oh, gee, do they have anything in town? Or you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. It's better than anything you can buy, and you're learning a valuable skill that, frankly, these days is starting to become something of a forgotten kind of skill. All right, if you need any of the comfrey I threw in that pile, you need any of the world's best deer repellent bone sauce, I make it right here at this farm. It's called Billy's Bone Sauce. Go check us out at the website. Might need some things down below. Whatever you need, check us out. And we thank you so much for your support. Hopefully this has been a blessing to you. And I'll give you an update here before too long. Until next time, this is Billy from Perma Pastures Farm, where permaculture is my passion. We'll see you next time.